Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool. It is so awesome to see you here today on this beautiful Monday, at least here in Vancouver. Hope wherever you are, it is a beautiful day out there as well. We've got an awesome show for you today. EP's old friend Steve Rechtschaffner is on the show today. He is one of the founders of EA Sports Big, and he is the creator of the SSX franchise. And has a very interesting background. He's got some new news to give us, but we're also going to talk a little bit about his history, and that's going to come up a little bit later in the show. He's in meetings right now because some cool things are going on, but he will be showing up a little bit later in the show. We've also got a fun Father's Day gift guide for you, but first, we have a rundown to get to, and I've got some dedications to a couple new members, Stan Fleet and Dennis. Thank you so much for your support, and also to Evan Wenzel, who says, Victor, I'm loving your channel. Keep up the great work. Been a fan since Judgment Day. Thank you so much. Let's get started with your rundown. Now, if you thought Shenmue 3 wasn't going to be delayed again, you thought wrong. The long-awaited new action-adventure game has been delayed yet again, this time for a few months. It was slated to land this August, but will now arrive in November, with the dev team saying that the game needs a little more refinement before it's finished. Shenmue 3 was first announced in 2015 and was originally slated to arrive in 2017 before being pushed back several times, and fans have already been waiting decades. The last game, Shenmue 2, was first released on the Dreamcast in 2001. So let's hope Shenmue 3 is worth the wait. I don't think fans should be concerned about any kinds of delays here. I think that what's happening is that the developers are trying to make this a masterpiece. They're working their butts off to not bring shame on their respective houses. They want to make something that they're very proud of, that sort of honors the Dreamcast originals, but also takes this potential, recurring franchise into the next generation of machines, and into our appreciation of what is available to us with modern technology. So hopefully it will be great, and hopefully it will be worth the wait. If you have been waiting, you are no stranger to waiting for Shenmue 3. I know you have patience. Let's give them a little faith and a little support, and let's hope that this thing turns out to be great. Shenmue 3, we will get it. We're just going to have to wait a little bit. Avengers Endgame directors Joe and Anthony Russo are gathering up a magical new project for Netflix. They're serving as executive producers on a new Netflix animated series based on Magic the Gathering, the hit tabletop card game from Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. Like the game, the show will focus on the magical wizards known as Planeswalkers, who cast spells to take on powerful enemies and monsters. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Netflix hopes that the animated series is a success. They can expand with more animated shows and live-action projects set in the same universe if it is. And this is on top of other fantasy shows that they've got on the way, like The Witcher. Expect Magic the Gathering to lay its cards on the table next year. It always, blows me away how effectively, diving into transmedia the Magic brand has been able to do over the last few years. There's tons of video games. There's lots of, licensed little, pieces of IP that you can get about Magic the Gathering. Unfortunately, I'm not a huge Magic the Gathering player, so I don't know all of the details and all of the reasons why it is such a huge obsession. But I do commend everybody that loves this stuff and supports it, and especially works on it, because I know there are a lot of very, very happy fans out there that have been able to play the game for years, and now you're going to be able to watch animated television shows. What a wonderful world we live in. All right, another big franchise is following in the footsteps of Pokemon Go. Square Enix has announced Dragon Quest Walk, a new augmented reality game for iOS and Android. Players will be able to explore real-life locations and encounter creatures from the JRPG series, collect items, battle other players, and level up and customize their character. This is just the latest in a long line of AR games that have followed the explosive success of 2016's Pokemon Go, with other franchises like Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, and Harry Potter already jumping on the bandwagon. Dragon Quest Walk will go into beta this summer. This is going to make Johnny Millennium from Happy Console Gamer very happy. I wonder if he'll ever look up from his phone now when I see him, when we go see movies and stuff. Will he only be playing Dragon Quest Walk everywhere he goes? Pokemon Go was an understandable obsession for people. It was a very, very cool property, and it became an explosively successful all over the world for very good reasons. And I think the Harry Potter game is probably going to be pretty fantastic as well. So I am psyched to see, and I heard Ghostbusters was fun too. I think that this AR technology and the skill set that a lot of developers have to kind of think outside the box, pun intended, to build AR stuff like this is amazing, man. I like it. Really kind of extends outward the possibilities around video games and what the word video game means these days. I'm psyched to see what that Harry Potter game is like. I still haven't played the Ghostbusters game, so I should give that a shot. But I am a fan of Dragon Quest. Every time I've jumped into a Dragon Quest game, I've really dug it. So I'm looking forward to playing Dragon Quest Walk, and I hope it's awesome. Now, game maker Bethesda Softworks has shed some light on their first big bomb. Bethesda head Todd Howard has spoken publicly about the disappointment surrounding their online game, Fallout 76. Speaking with IGN, Howard reveals that they had a very difficult time developing the game because online multiplayer is not something Bethesda is used to making. He admits that the team even suspected that it would have a bumpy launch. He admits that the game deserved a lot of criticism that it received, and before it was released, the team even suspected that it would have a bumpy launch. Fallout 76 received poor reviews for a lack of gameplay variety, and it was plagued with glitches and bugs. Since then, the player base has dropped off significantly, although Bethesda is still supporting it with new content. We'll have to wait and see if they have any big Fallout 76 announcements planned for their E3 press conference this Sunday. And I expect that there's going to be a bit of a mea culpa. I think that this was a little preemptive strike on the part of Bethesda to get out there ahead of E3 and to talk about the fact that there were some concerns with this title, some understandable concerns with this title. A lot of people not pleased. But we saw something similar with Elder Scrolls Online. They stayed with it and they kept adding to it, and it became a very big community with a lot of players very happy in that world. And we've seen that again, with games like Destiny or The Division. It is possible to turn these things around. We're probably a little bit more skeptical because we've had many games that we can point to that have had bumpy online launches, and this was yet another one. But when we see something like this, or EA's Anthem, we're like, okay, are you really going to continue to support this? We've heard that Anthem wasn't in the lineup of stuff that EA is going to be talking about on I guess it's this Saturday. Holy crap, E3 is coming up fast. But maybe they will surprise us, EA. Maybe they will surprise us with some talk about Anthem. But I can bet for damn sure that Bethesda has got something to say about Fallout 76. I think that they are proud of the endeavor and also very appreciative of the fact that they should have kept testing it and kept tuning it and revealed it and released it to people to help them make it a better game at launch. And you know what? These are all lessons that developers across the industry are learning. These endeavors to create these persistent online worlds and online games are a little crazy, a little out of hand, and they seem to, they seem to affect every one of these publishers every time they step up to bat to do something like this. Bethesda has the money in the bank, and they have the goodwill with their community. It might have been tarnished a little bit, but they still have the goodwill within their community to turn things around. I think we're going to see some exciting things at the Bethesda press conference. It's not like they had one disappointment, and that's going to be it for those guys. There's a lot more to come. So we're going to have lots to talk about come E3. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for our rundown. Let's take a look at this day in everything cool. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for June 3rd. On this day in 1986, Nintendo released Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, featuring new levels and retooled gameplay that made everything much more difficult and less straightforward. New power-ups were also included, along with new mechanics like gusts of wind that could alter your trajectory mid-jump. The Lost Levels also featured a redesigned version of Luigi. For the first time, you could jump higher, something that continues to this day. At the time, The Lost Levels didn't get an official release outside of Japan, although it has since been made available in various Mario collections, as well as Nintendo's Virtual Console. All right, you guys, we've got something a little bit special today. I've been looking at lots of fun things this year, and a very special day for fathers everywhere is coming up. They actually call it Father's Day, and I thought, why don't we take a look at some great gift ideas for this very special occasion. All right, you guys, this is a little bit of a different video for everybody because Father's Day is coming up very quickly. Hey Siri, when's Father's Day?
Father's Day is on Sunday, June 16th, 2019.
There you have it. Father's Day is on Sunday, June 16th. So you've got to start thinking about what you're going to get for dear old dad. And since I am one, and I happen to be a fan of many electronic gadgets and gizmos and video games. I don't know if you know that about me, but I really enjoy video games. I thought I'd put together a nice little list of some gifts that your dad or a dad you know could really appreciate. Or your mom, if she's a single mom, but also likes video games and fun things.
Dad, I love you.
So I've got a bunch of ideas for you, and I'm going to start with some video games. Let's say your dad is a PlayStation 4 owner. A perfect dad game is God of War, because Kratos, of course, is the ultimate dad in this game. At first you don't think so, but as you get deeper and deeper into this incredible adventure with this beautiful story, you really start to feel like this dad really cares about his son. And it's a wonderful story, but better than that, it's an incredible game. Easily a Game of the Year contender for last year. So if your dad doesn't have that, check out God of War.
Get in the boat, boy.
Also for the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, I would say Ace Combat 7 would be a fun visit for any pop out there. Ace Combat 7, of course, utilizes all of the modern tech to be absolutely beautiful. And on the PlayStation 4 version of the game, you get the extra bonus of it being VR compatible if you've got the PlayStation VR headset, which also might not be a bad Father's Day gift. Resident Evil 2 has become one of the best games of 2019 so far, and your dad may remember the previous iteration of Resident Evil 2, so it will be a big trip and a lot of fun and a lot of scares and a lot of frustrations because this game is tough. Incredible graphics, lots and lots of really lush environments, and all of that stuff that looks so pre-rendered back in the day. It's all three-dimensional, and you can interact with a lot more objects, and the zombies are more fearsome than you can remember. Now, for the Xbox One, in addition to Resident Evil 2, I would also check out Forza Horizon 4. This was the game that added the Bond car DLC. If your dad's been on the earth for a little while, more than likely he has seen a Bond movie, and more than likely he has dug one of the James Bond cars. And in Forza Horizon 4, you get to drive them around. They didn't really add any kind of like James Bond storyline or anything like that. It's gorgeous and fun, and that extra Bond DLC stuff is just a nice treat. So that would be a fantastic Father's Day gift. I would also say that The Division 2 makes a terrific game, whether you pick that up for the PlayStation or the Xbox One or the PC. Doesn't really matter where you go with this title. It's phenomenal. Just make sure that whatever version of The Division 2 you get for dad, he's got friends that also play on that similar system. You can't play Xbox against PC against PlayStation 4, which is a little disappointing, but the game is not. The game is a ton of fun, particularly with friends. Now, if your dad likes to travel or has to travel for work or something, a terrific companion that you could get for him is a Nintendo Switch. And if you're going to get a Nintendo Switch for anybody, you have to get them a copy of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is my favorite game of all time. It is one of those games, it's almost like reading through a fantastic choose-your-adventure novel. Basically, go anywhere you want to in this game. It's absolutely limitless in terms of scope. You really could just, explore to your heart's content and attack the objectives in any order that you want. It's really just about making it your own story. It's a tour de force kind of experience, and experience is the word that you underline because everybody that plays The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild has a totally different one. Now, I've got a couple of other suggestions for Nintendo Switch games that are terrific for on-the-go travelers out there. One of them is Wargroove, which came out earlier this year. It's an awesome turn-based strategy game that kind of evokes classics like Advance Wars and Fire Emblem. It's got a great role-playing story with lots of cool characters and lots of cool abilities, lots of differences in the play styles and the mechanics depending on the factions that you choose. Wargroove was an awesome surprise, and it's definitely a game that will travel very well with your dad. Another one is Golf Story, which is a role-playing golf game where you actually do have to hit the links and get into some golf experiences, but you also have all of this interplay and conversation and tasks and objectives with the different people that you'll encounter through these golf courses and through these little towns and areas that you're going to be exploring in this title. Incredible game, very, very fun and deep, but also, again, cutesy and cartoony and kind of retro in its style, accessible, just plain awesome. Now, if your dad happens to be a retro gamer and has a small collection of Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo games, I've got a couple of perfect gift ideas for you. Analog has made modern systems that hook up to an HDMI port in your television or your receiver that play these cartridges as they're meant to be played in 2019. Both are beautiful. The Super Nintendo version is called the Super NT, and the Sega Genesis version is called the Mega SG. The Genesis version also has an adapter so you can play Sega Master System games right out of the box. It comes in the box, and you can also plug it into an old Sega CD system if all of that is operational. But what they do is they recreate these cartridge experiences in just pristine quality. The blacks are deep black. You don't see weird phasing or color shifting or anything. Everything is just rock solid. Both of these hardware options are not inexpensive. They'll each cost upwards of $200 US to buy them and have them shipped to you. And they don't come with controllers. You actually have to have classic Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis controllers and plug them in, and they'll work fine. Or you can get the new 8-bit DOE Super Nintendo variant or the Sega Genesis variants that they have. Those are awesome controllers. Incredible stuff. And if your dad digs the sort of old golden days of gaming, you definitely have to check out either the analog Super NT or the analog Mega SG. Or if you're very generous, get them both. Now, if you want your dad to jump into the latest and greatest in VR tech, you have to take a look at the brand new Oculus Quest. This is a cordless VR system. Everything that you need to be able to play games in virtual reality is included right in the box. You get a couple of the brand new Oculus Touch devices, and you get the new headset, the Quest headset, which actually has cameras mounted all around it so that it gives you 6 degrees of freedom. So you can move, and you can look around in every direction. You can turn around in any direction that you want to, and you can play games as if you have got room scale built all around you. You actually draw a little guardian on the floor around you so that you've got kind of your safe space that you can walk into. It's about the same kind of fidelity as you would get out of the PlayStation VR, so it's not state-of-the-art, but the Quest comes in at $400 US for the 64 gigabyte model, and I think that's plenty to jump into VR for the first time. And the fact that you don't have to plug in any cables or wires or have any external device running any of this software is absolutely phenomenal. And there's some pretty damn good games. Robo Recall and Beat Saber and Vader Immortal. There's lots of great experiences that are already available, and the system just launched. It's amazing. Now, if you do have a dad that likes to play some games on the PC but also has to get some work done and does some traveling, you definitely have to take a look at the MSI P65 computer. Now, this is the computer that MSI sent me and I've reviewed, and I have it on my desk when we shoot EP Live, and I've traveled extensively with this device, and I freaking love it. The games on this laptop look better than my Xbox One X or my PlayStation 4 Pro. Like when I play something like The Division 2, I'm blown away by the quality that I see on the screen. Now, yes, it's not in 4K, it's not up-res to 4K, but the lighting and the fidelity on the character faces and the fluidity of the motion and the movement, it just blows me away. And then I will plug it into my 4K TV and it upscales, and it still looks better than my awesome consoles. I still have a tough time believing it. It's just incredible that I get that much horsepower out of a laptop. So it has a lot of power under the hood, but it looks sleek, it looks elegant, just a cool Windows laptop, but it can run games ferociously well, and that's why I love this so much. Now, it's not inexpensive. You're going to be spending, a few $1,000, so you're going to have to love your dad very much. But if you do, and you've got that spending money and you're looking for a laptop that they can also play games on, I guarantee your dad is going to have a huge smile on his face, and he won't forget you come Christmas time. Another device that I recently picked up for myself that I absolutely love are Apple's AirPods. The reason why I really like these things, and I didn't even consider this when I bought them, is that I look at my phone a whole hell of a lot less when I have these in. And I like that because I think that we live in a society where we're always looking at our phones, and suddenly when you pop these in, Siri becomes much more responsive. So when you're doing things like texting somebody, and on the way to do this shoot, honestly, I texted Blake and told him that I was off to go and shoot this video and I'd have it to him right away, and I didn't look at my phone once. And Blake got the message, he sent back it was an okay, and I thought, okay, this is really cool. The sound quality is pretty damn solid for the fact that they are wireless. wireless. You can use it as a microphone too when you're recording some videos, provided you have the right app. I've just been really impressed that I haven't looked at my phone as much, particularly if you pair it with the Apple Watch. Now, I don't have the latest, the Series 4 watch. I have the Series 3, but I see that when I use Siri in concert with my watch and I'm texting my wife, or, I want to get some information like did the Raptors win last night or something like that, I can just ask it into my earbuds and check my watch and I get that information right away. And again, it keeps me away from my phone, which I think a lot of us have this addiction. We're on these damn devices way too much. Other thing, of course, with the Apple Watch, particularly if your father's a little bit older, there's a lot of health tracking and a lot of health data. Now, I appreciate if your dad is into the Android stuff, those aren't going to be for him. A fantastic movie that would be perfect for your dad because there's a lot of father-son dynamics within the movie, or father-child dynamics within the movie. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is just an absolutely outstanding piece of work. It won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars earlier this year. Incredible soundtrack, incredible performances, amazing sense of humor, and visuals that you have never seen before, only in your mind's eye as you've been flipping through comic books for years. So if your dad has ever loved a comic book, or is a fan of Spider-Man in any fashion, or just appreciates wonderful artwork and wonderful animation, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a can't-miss situation. Particularly as a gift, because it's just so unique and so beautiful. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, whether you buy the 4K Blu-ray, the Blu-ray, or a digital video file to share with your pop, he is going to love it.
I love you.
That's a copy.
And finally, the last gift that I would recommend is for dad that maybe had a history of hanging out in some arcades. There's a whole suite of these Replicade tiny mini arcade systems out there. Replicade sent me the Tempest machine. They asked me, which one do you want of these things? I love the game Tempest. I love the fact that it has that little paddle control and you're blasting at all these different enemies that are coming at you. And they did a fantastic job of just shrinking the arcade cabinet down and letting you play and hear the Tempest experience. I would say that that would make a wonderful gift for anybody that has a dad out there that spent a lot of time hanging out in arcades or pool halls, dropping in quarters into classic arcade systems. And you don't want to fill up his whole life with a bunch of these. I think you want to find the little mini machine that suits your dad the best. Check out the library that Replicate has got, but I can't say enough how cool it is to have a little mini Tempest machine. So there you go. There's a bunch of ideas for your dad. Make sure whatever you buy him or pick up for him, you'll also take him out and tell him how much you love him. This is coming from a dad that can never hear that enough. Thanks for watching, everybody, and happy Father's Day. That was a fun piece to put together, and a round of applause for our buddy Blake Siefkin, who cut that together super quickly. Great job, Blake. It's always fun to come up with, gift guides or sort of like some, I guess, lists of things that are cool that people might dig. And I'm very fortunate as a reviewer. I get my hands on a lot of stuff, and it's just fun to talk about some of my favorite things. But we're about to have even more fun because a good friend of the show, he's appeared on EP many times over the years because he's worked on lots of cool games. He's got something new to tell us about, but this guy's history includes SSX, NBA Street, FIFA, Triple Play Baseball, Swatch, Sega, all kinds of incredible stuff. Please welcome Steve Rechtschaffner. Come on up, my friend. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, Victor.
Looking good, my friend. Grab a seat. Steve, you reached out and you said, I might have something cool to talk about. And I said, well, you were fantastic the last time we had you on. I think it was about a year and a bit ago. And we reminisced, I think, mostly about SSX. And what got me thinking about that was that SSX 3 became a playable game on the Xbox backward compatibility list.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just amazing to get back into it. And I was so, floored to have you back on. So we talked a lot about SSX. And then you had a reunion.
Yeah, we did.
Has there been a little bit more, buzz or a little bit more discussion about the days of EA Sports Big in the last little while?
Yeah, there's been a lot of different kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
When you and I spoke last time, actually, I think it was the conversation we had off camera.
Yeah.
Where we were just talking about some of these really interesting things going on with streaming games coming kind of around the corner. and new business models coming in, like free to play on console and PC, and that was before we saw monsters like Apex and
Yes.
those things coming. But it's been interesting. And then, as you mentioned, last fall, I had a reunion at my house, and a big chunk of the team from the early SSX Tricky, and SSX3 teams came by, and it was great to see a lot of people I hadn't seen for a long time, and some of them have gone on to do amazing things in game space, and some of them have gone on to do other crazy creative stuff. But there was a theme to it all, which was people who worked on it felt like they were part of making something special.
Yeah.
And they felt like it was an experience where they could really express their creativities, for a lot of them in ways they hadn't been able to since. And that really inspired me. And, reconnecting with you, and actually you had pointed me to some things that other people had been saying. A lot of people are really passionate on the internet with videos about, what happened to SSX, what happened to, Street Volume 2,
Yeah.
And, some of those pieces that people have done have been really insightful and interesting, but way more inspiring are the comments.
Yeah.
And, the things that these games meant to people, and the way they touched people in a way maybe a little differently than other games have. And, I was never excited about the idea of bringing something back for retro sense, but
yeah.
what really got me going was the idea of being able to stream games and instantly be able to play something I might be curious about. The idea of new business models where I might not have to pay money up front. It might be part of a subscription, or it might be free to play initially.
Right.
And all those things made way for what I've always really fought for in games, which is make games that are super accessible, really appealing on the surface.
Yeah.
Kind of like a good pop song.
Yeah.
And let the merits of the game decide whether you keep playing or not.
Yeah.
So that kind of got me up to some recent things I've been thinking about.
Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the days at working at Electronic Arts, or do you want to just sort of reveal a little bit about what's cooking right now?
Well, I'll tell you what I can share with you today.
Okay, good.
Which is really the confluence of all those things I've just been talking about. I think create an opportunity to introduce a new style of game and a new kind of game that's absolutely built on the back of competition.
Awesome.
Because I love competing. I love games.
Accessible competition, which
Absolutely.
was a hallmark of SSX,
Yeah.
right? You didn't need to be a snowboarder or know anything about the sport.
No.
But you could have tons of fun and compete with your pals in that.
Absolutely.
And the AI. Yeah.
And what was great about it was you felt like you were pretty good at it going in.
Right.
But yet you never felt like you perfected it.
It was a weird game for Electronic Arts. It was a weird game because EA was really pushing towards realism and authenticity with their relationships with all the leagues and the sports.
Oh, yeah.
And SSX is far from realistic.
Oh, yeah.
But it honors the sport of snowboarding in a wonderful way, and it's almost like this arcadey blast that just felt so funky and so organic and poppy,
If I would say there's one theme to almost everything that I've been passionate about in my life, it's making things larger than life.
Right.
And what makes, I think, SSX so great, and the same I think would go for Street Volume 2.
Yep.
Which is, at its core, it feels like you're really in control.
Yeah.
You don't feel like, you're hitting a button and a bunch of crazy stuff. You feel like you're doing it.
Yeah.
So there's a plausibility to it, and that comes from amazing physics, great gameplay, great camera systems, and, it looks simple, but it's a lot of work to make it look that simple.
Right.
But on top of it, with SSX, we said, as we were designing the courses. If we didn't have to worry about a budget
Yeah.
in the real world,
Yeah.
if we could spend $100 million to build a course like Metro City, if we didn't have to worry about killing people,
Yeah.
because missing a 200-foot gap isn't going to be good for your body.
No.
But if you just give yourself the permission to forget about those things, then what you create feels, when it's done well, like you are actually doing it.
Right.
You feel a sense of accomplishment. You feel a belief in these worlds. And the weird part is, when we first released the game and you had these courses and they were in cities, or there was giant production and signage and grandstands and jumbotrons, people laugh. Oh, yeah, that's so ridiculous. There'll never be anything like that. But, you look at a border cross race in the Olympics or in the X Games or a big air contest.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like it now.
I mean, honestly, SSX was EA's opportunity to have like their own Tony Hawk and their franchise. And to their credit, they did make a bunch of different games, but it seemed to get away from them because they lost the purity that your team was able to kind of find. And do you think it just got too expensive to make the games, or did they just try to change it too much and deviate too much, or had they explored everything that they could have?
It's something I thought a lot about over the years, because I ended up, after SSX 3, leaving SSX, and I left that in the hands of my predecessor, and I went into a more global role, working with a lot of the studios around the world.
Yep.
And I tried to figure out, why did I actually do that? Because I really, and maybe it was ego and
You
wanting a
wanted to
bigger
challenge yourself,
title,
sure, yeah.
and all that crappy stuff you have to go through in life before you figure that part out. But what it was is, EA does some things incredibly well.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly good at developing properties, sequeling properties, and EA Sports Big came out of left field for them.
Yeah.
So we launched it with SSX, and SSX only came to be because a couple of folks who ran our studio here in Canada at the time, Don Matrick, who oversaw the studios worldwide, and Paul Lee, who was then GM of our studio, they gave me a lot of rope to go do this.
Yeah.
We used to have this concept at EA, if you were an executive producer, called a silver bullet. And if your last game was a hit and it exceeded its targets, then you had a silver bullet, which meant you could go make a game.
Right.
And you could kind of, put your neck on the line. And if you succeeded again, then you got another silver bullet. And if you didn't, well, you didn't get as much rope. But those two folks were really instrumental in creating an atmosphere where I could have a lot of rope. And we also created a different culture around how we built that game.
Yeah.
And because at that time, most of EA's games were rated 70 to 75, and they were okay. Great brands, great marketing, good games. But we targeted making a game that internally we used to describe it as Nintendo quality.
Right.
First party Nintendo.
Yes.
And we said we need to be 90 plus rated. And we actually launched the first SSX in Japan first with the launch of PlayStation 2. And we said, you know what? We want to be the first Western game, to break the ceiling with a magazine like, Super Famitsu in Japan.
Right on.
So we set a high bar, and we had a team that really bought into it. And everybody in their own areas was creatively challenged. On the audio side, people were trying to do things that had never been done before, which we did. I mean, there were 24 tracks of streaming audio at any given time.
Amazing.
And,
How big was the team on the first game? I looked at the credits on SSX 3, and it was pretty big. There was,
it got bigger each time.
About 60 people or something like that.
Even bigger, I think.
I mean, how many on the first SSX?
I think by the time we were done, maybe 40.
Okay. That's not tiny, but that's still minuscule compared to
teams
something
were
now.
just really starting to scale up.
Yeah.
And I think it just about doubled for SSX3.
Yeah.
Because we took this approach of an open mountain. But all the core values were the same.
Yeah.
And so I think what happened, and that was at the end of the day, I didn't create one course. I didn't create a single character. I didn't pick a single song. I was there to help shape the vision.
Right.
And then to make sure what we were building was right for the vision.
Right.
And
Was it a case of because you kind of pitched this concept initially, right? You brought it to Don and to the other team members.
I pitched it to Don the first time I met him.
Right.
I'd never made a video game.
Right.
I met him.
That's amazing. I mean, that speaks to the risk taking that Don Matchik was able to do back then.
Oh
right?
yeah. He had a well. I came from at that point a background in creating brands and in marketing, and then in production and making music videos and commercials and TV shows. But along the way, I had also created the actual event of Border Cross in the real world.
Yeah.
And so when I met Don, and it's kind of an odd story, but I actually met him because my wife wanted to move from Los Angeles home to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll see if I can get a job. So through another friend, I met Don, and I said, look, I've done all this video work for Reebok around fitness, and I've created this other sport, and I had actually gone into Illustrator, which I was really bad at, and I made a mock Genesis box, Sega Genesis box called Border X, and I flipped it over, and then it was this interactive fitness idea.
Oh wow!
And I
Thank God
said,
that didn't take off, eh?
Anyway, I showed it to him, and he said, "Well, those are interesting, but
why don't you let someone else make the hardware?" And
would you be interested in sort of getting going and cutting your teeth? How about on making a soccer game?"
Yeah.
And I went, "I love soccer." So
did you?
Yeah, I did.
Or was that the marketer in you then?
No, I did. I played it as a kid.
Cool.
And
so you helped to make this little game called FIFA.
Well, I was just one of many people.
I know.
At that point, Bruce McMillan was the powerhouse behind FIFA. My first game was FIFA for the Super Nintendo.
Wow.
Which I got.
And you had worked at Sega on the Genesis as well, right?
I hadn't worked at Sega, so as a commercial director and producer, in video. One of the jobs we had taken on, and we'd done numerous videos for Sega.
Nice.
For CES back then.
Okay.
I'm actually a game show host in one of them.
No way.
A maniacal game show
my
host.
God.
But through that, I got reintroduced to games and got a Genesis.
Did you make commercials that we saw around the Sega Genesis? Did they air on television?
Not on the broadcast side. They would have
Okay.
been ones at the shows.
That's awesome.
But lots of other. Oh my God, I could show you reels and reels of bad music videos and goofy commercials. And
that's cool. But so when you got into SSX, that was basically the entree into building your own platform at Electronic Arts and really giving yourself a stage to kind of And so I would imagine that you passed this vision off to all of these artists and programmers and designers, and they had to build a game that you maybe didn't build with them, but you had to kind of make sure it felt right for you.
Yeah. So for me, I've always, at the core of everything I do is a DJ.
Yeah.
And, and that DJ is all about curation. But, I think of that in the sense of what you see, what you hear.
Right.
And more importantly, what you feel.
Right.
And as my wife often likes to remind me, I'm much more of a feeler than I am a thinker.
Yeah.
I can think a thought, but it doesn't really mean a lot to me till I essentially feel it. And so a lot of SSX early on was about a feeling.
Right.
And, sharing that with people, figuring out ways to prototype pieces of it, bring it to life. And, as more and more people got involved and we were open to new ideas and ways to do things, that led to some of the really out-of-the-box stuff like having, Rozelle, the human beatbox, in there as the in-game announcer.
Yeah.
And having, having some of the moments that just felt, hidden shortcuts, things like that just felt like things you had never done before. And
do you think when you were transitioning away or sort of riding the ladder at EA that was kind of, the end of EA Sports Big?
Well, I think it's funny how much I've seen about, the rise and fall of EA Sports Big in recent years. I think what it came from...
I think we can collectively say that we really missed that brand, and it was because we know how much money the EA Sports brand makes for the company, it was almost like a give back to the gaming community.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, we haven't forgotten you. We're going to make some silly sports stuff too for you to just have fun with,
Yeah, you know what? the words that come to mind for me are joyful,
Yeah.
gratuitously entertaining, but yet at
Yeah.
their core, they're amazingly competitive.
Right.
And you feel like you have a great sense of control to do amazing things. But
It's such a genius brand for EA to have, and it boggles the mind why it's not there still.
well, I think in looking back, the reason it died is a pretty obvious one. And it is, at that time, EA was what it was. And there was a model that it knew really well, which it had made itself very successful on,
Right.
which was if you have something good, you keep bringing it out. And at that point, it was you bring it out in an annualized way.
Yes.
And I think for me, that was the reason I actually ended up stepping away after SSX3, and for the most part from the big brand, because when we had an amazing 1-2 punch in launching big. First, out of our group, which was called Chaos, we had SSX, and then I think we had Tricky, followed by NBA Street Volume 2.
Right.
And that in itself is a masterpiece.
Yes, it is.
And
Is that your favorite game that you've worked on?
in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the team on it was equally as passionate as the folks on SSX. And again, what I love is the team involved a whole different set of skills. They reached out to people outside of gaming who brought in different points of view. Guys like Jimmy Smith, who had masterminded some great street basketball content at Nike, which led to bringing in Bobito, which led into, between those guys, a whole, a masterful feeling of old school hip hop.
Yep.
And on the gameplay side and on the visual side, having a very stylistic approach, which, to your earlier point, EA was going, more and more and more photorealistic.
Right, of course. Yeah.
And I remember presenting the game at a meeting of the senior execs and them looking at it going, well, why is it so cartoony?
Yeah. Yeah.
We need this to look more photorealistic. And luckily, I was able to say, well, this is how it looks because this is different.
Yeah.
And whether you want to believe it or not, I believe this is really cool.
That's awesome. If you guys have any questions that you want to ask Steve Rechtschaffner about working on these EA Sports big titles or anything else, you can ask him. You can pry about the new company that he's going to build. Go ahead and ask that in the chat, and we'll get to him as much as we want. And that includes you, DG. I know that you don't think that we're making a live show. We're making a live show, buddy. So please go ahead and ask us any questions. Just keep it all caps for us, okay? And Blake, help me out if I miss anything cool. I want to talk a little bit about, transitioning to the next stage in your life when you started to look at other EA. Did you get a different sense of the business at that point? Was it
Well,
was it more about dollars and cents for you?
Yeah, what it was for me, so when we initially, coined this brand, EA Sports Big, and had a couple of great products out,
Yeah.
I was asked to essentially be the I believe it was godfather
Yeah.
of Big.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, what does that mean? Does that mean I get to decide when the games are ready to go out, or no? We just need you to help the other teams. And there was a couple of other teams already working on ideas.
Yeah.
Down in Redwood Shores.
Right. Where was
And-
Shocks made? I always used to love that game.
That I don't remember.
Yeah. I know it wasn't a Vancouver game.
So I think part of it was, every one of the 3 SSX games that we worked on within Chaos were all 90 plus rated.
Right.
Street Volume 2 was 90 rated. And my approach to it was, you don't put out a new game till you know you can deliver something that both has freshness, newness, and can be at that quality level.
Yeah.
And I could see that the cadence I was being asked to deliver at, we need another one for next Christmas. I'm like, it's not ready.
Yeah.
People haven't, Nintendo doesn't put a new Mario out every year.
Right.
And I don't pretend that we were Mario, but we were a fantastical experience.
Yeah.
That wanted to give you things you had never done before.
Well, and that, honestly, that's the curse of Tony Hawk as well. They did the same thing to Tony. They put too many of those games out in quick succession, and what Nintendo does better than anybody is they create, even if we know these games are coming, you can guess what there is going to be revealed
Right.
at E3 pretty much every year, but they make you want them.
Yeah.
You know, they create anticipation and expectation and desire. And if this stuff is so annualized that you just can count on it, like, you know, it gets numbing after a while.
But that, for me, is what's so exciting about what's happening today in games.
Yeah.
Because games are basically ongoing services now. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to think about, you know...
That's a dirty word for a lot of people, though, right? There's a lot of people that are so against this idea of, you know, publishers and developers keeping their hands out for more money and more money. The people are on the other side saying, I just want to pay once and get the whole game. And there's a lot of developers and publishers that are trying to go out there right now and say, we don't do the microtransactions, and we don't, you know, we're not doing games as service. Are you nervous about that side at all, or?
No, not at all.
No?
I mean, change, everybody's always on a different part of the wheel when it comes to change.
Right.
You know, for me, an analogy is, you know, I I can admit this publicly, I watch a lot of TV.
Yeah.
You know, I love great television.
Sure.
And if a show grabs me, whether I can binge watch it or whether I've got to wait till it comes out, I keep coming back.
Right.
My relationship develops over time.
Right.
It's not a one-time transaction that you've got to convince me.
Right.
You know, like
and certainly games are doing that now too, right?
Yeah,
like
and
as much as we're, you know, there's a vocal group that is up in arms about this new model for games. There's a lot of success in that as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I look back on the first 3 SSX titles, I think collectively between them, we probably sold about 7 million copies.
Right.
I think if you were to bring out, and not that this is exactly what my plan is, but if you were to bring out SSX today in a free-to-play model, especially with the amount of personal expression you could, I mean, we had personal expression through the characters back then.
Right.
That you didn't control.
Right.
And I think the numbers would be amazing because a lot of people were reticent to spend that kind of money.
Yes.
On a game about snowboarding.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know if they would like it. And most of it was word of mouth.
Right.
And if you take away that barrier to accessibility, and you can just, you know, if you're on a platform like, you know, Stadia or EA streaming platform and you're a subscriber, well, who's ever, and you can just try it.
Yeah.
I'm willing to risk that if you try a new game that's made with the same values and passion and entertainment value and controls, that we can hook you. And
Yeah.
I think you know, it's interesting how things go full circle, but one of the people that was on the SSX team is friends with the folks who made Rocket League.
Okay.
And I was telling him, I go, I'm really inspired by Rocket League.
Yeah.
You know, it's action, it's arcadey, but it's hard, it's competition. And I can keep playing it over and over and over. I love competing at it. He goes, well, you know, those folks were inspired by SSX.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be inspired by that because I think what they've done, you know, they capture all kinds of gamers. They've got PC gamers, console gamers, and I was at a huge arena-sized esports event about a year and a half ago.
For Rocket League?
It was one of the games being played.
Right.
But what was so cool is when they shift games, like a third of the arena would leave.
Yeah.
Except when Rocket League came on.
Because it's so easy to watch.
Everybody liked it.
Right.
Everybody watched it. It's kind of like, you know, it's like everybody's kind of, you know, side hustle.
The thing about Rocket League, and it's that sports dynamic which makes it kind of refreshing and different from a lot of the other stuff out there. Everything that's called esports out there, there's a lot of shooters or tactical strategy action games, but Rocket League is truly a sports game. But it's also not free to play. There's a price tag at the beginning which isn't too high.
No. And
you get a big chunk of game, but if you want to embellish, you can spend a little bit more. I think that feels a little better to the traditional community. But I also agree with you. I think you're absolutely correct that games have been priced way too high for way too long, and they have had this ridiculous barrier to entry.
Well, I don't exactly mean that.
Yeah.
I think for some people, that really works.
Yeah.
And if that was the only model, but what I think it does is it stops a lot of people from trying things because you're so deeply invested. Imagine you're picking a series on HBO or on Netflix. Well, forget about their business models, but imagine you've got to pay for every episode up front before you've ever watched a single episode.
Yes.
a lot of people aren't going to sample those shows.
Right.
A lot of shows won't get discovered.
Right.
And so what I really like is just all these new technologies and all these new business models have re-inspired me to want to make the kinds of games that I'm passionate about, but in new ways
That's cool.
that I think more people can discover than ever.
Right.
And be competing with people, cross town or around the world, and can have these over-the-top, visual and audio joy fests.
Awesome.
And that's,
Do you have the connection still in the industry that you can, bring this out into the marketplace at the scale that you would want to? Like,
Yeah.
Your name associated with anything close to like an SSX creates massive expectation. Like, that's what we want. We want there to be this amazing, never-ending SSX experience.
Well, I've spent quite a bit of time in the last half year doing two things.
Yep.
One, reconnecting to a number of people who I'd like to be part of the core team that helped shape this.
Cool.
And two, spending time with the leaders at the organizations that we potentially would partner with and say, here's the vision. Is this something you could be interested in?
Nice.
And I think they all have their own needs around streaming and subscription or free to play. And so those pieces really make it feel like the timing is right.
Right.
So what we'll be doing is the next 2 months are really about locking the team down.
Mm-hmm.
Early fall is going to be around just we have a number of concepts that we've been playing around with and focusing it down to one or two.
Right.
And then from there, starting to prototype. And then from there, we'll re-engage and see who makes the best potential partner for us. Because all of these services that are going out right now, from what I see, are largely depending on existing games and the way games are currently built.
Right.
And I think by having something that you can just jump into,
Right.
that's immediately engaging, I think it can really be a zig to the industry's zag.
And I don't know if SSX or a similar kind of idea is, we all hope it is, but there is a direct and distinct absence of that as a play style out there. And there are snowboarding games and things, but they don't lean heavily enough into the fantasy. And so every time we as reviewers get our hands on them, we're like, well, there's some stuff in here that kind of makes you feel similar to SSX, but it's not SSX.
Well, even what the later SSX has lost is its curation.
Yeah.
It's about, there's a rhythm and a flow that takes a lot of work to create.
Right.
And it goes back to that same DJing concept.
Yeah.
You've got to have those moments put together in such a way. They're crafted. It's really, really crafted. In the same way, when somebody builds a track for a new Formula One race, there's crafting that goes into that.
Right.
And it's the same thing. So it's I can tell you, yes, there is an idea based in snow.
Yeah.
There's an idea based in water.
Cool.
There's an idea based on, I'll call it motorized things you can drive and ride.
Okay.
And then there's a concept around a traditional sport,
Cool.
which is highly competitive, which you play head-to-head, done in an over-the-top,
Right.
action, arcade-oriented way.
Awesome.
So we're starting this up. This is not about just a title. We obviously have to start with a title.
Yep.
But for us, it's about making a sequence of titles and really becoming known as a group and as a studio
That's amazing.
that can bring that to the world. And you know what? The good news is the people in the core part of this team have done it.
Right.
And now,
So you're working with some of your colleagues from back in the big days?
yes, I will be.
That's
but
fantastic.
not we're not putting the old band back together.
No.
I'm equally excited with working with a whole bunch of new people I've never worked with before.
Right on.
And it's that's where the conversations have gone on. Who's at the right place in their life that really wants to take on a challenge like this? This is going to be some heavy lifting.
For sure. One of the things that, of course, my mind is reeling right now. One of the things that I always respected so much about SSX in particular was the character creation you guys spent so much time with the voices and the style and the challenges. And because we were racing on snow, even though there were lots of Mario Kart copycats, the engine sounds and the explosion sounds would always drown out the voices. But on snow, you could hear the chatter, you could hear the interplay. And so you built these characters that could transpose. You could put them into other kinds of things. Is that something that you're possibly thinking about?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the games were ahead of their time in terms of what you did with your character in-game triggered a lot of reactions and dialogue from your competitors as well as yourself. It was, I think, an early form of self-expression within a game.
For sure.
And we also saw a lot of that in Street, where, you know, if you're really on a guy and you'll start to piss him off. And they'll start to behave. So that's a big part of it. But one of the parts I'm most excited about is empowering the user to decide how and when they want their characters to express themselves, but through things they're doing in the game or achieving in the game. Because I think, you know, playing some of the games currently where I can get my character to do something really fun based on me doing something in game rather than just triggering an animation, that feels like I'm doing it.
That's awesome.
And I like that.
That's awesome. I do have some questions here. Game Freak 84, who came up with the name SSX Tricky? Did someone on the team just love that song?
I did.
Okay.
And I'll tell you exactly how I did that. And there aren't a whole lot of things I would say I did, but so in my past, I was the creative and marketing director for Swatch Watch.
Right.
I did that for the first 7 years of the brand. And one of the things I did there was help support and launch the first ever hip-hop tour.
Cool.
And that was Fat Boys, Nucleus, Houdini, Run DMC, and Curtis Blow.
Nice.
So I spent a lot of time hanging around with Run DMC.
Right on.
And so I had an old mixtape, or I guess it was probably a CD by then.
Right.
And we were thinking about, because we knew we were introducing a lot more tricks into the Tricky version. And I literally was driving from my house in West Vancouver to the studio in Burnaby one morning, and I'm rocking out to Tricky, you know, looking like the goofy, you know, white guy I am, and and I went, it's Tricky, and I went, it's Tricky,
Yeah,
and I came in and I was just on fire, going, I got the name.
That's great.
And then we had the song, and it was very funny reaching back out to Russell Simmons and Lior, who I knew from
a different
10 years
world,
before,
right?
going,
Yeah.
hey, here's what I'm doing now, and hey, can I license your song? And they were like, sure.
They
and,
must have flipped.
and I said, well, do you have the I need the 24-track master, because we're going to tear it apart. And anyway, I think we got a really good value on that, because
Right.
but it also, I think, brought the song back to the forefront.
For sure.
I think back then they got a lot of downloads, back when people paid for that.
That's awesome. I've got a question from S Block 2. You say that you are a DJ. What tracks are in your set, and can you put a link to your mixtape in the show notes?
Well, the stuff I play today is so weird and goofy. My most recent playlist that I've been sharing out with friends, I call Que Sera on Spotify. And it is basically...
Doris Day in that one?
No, but it was inspired by Sly and the Family Stone's cover of Que Sera.
No way.
So I started just, put it together over a couple of months, and I just started looking for odd covers.
Cool.
Or really weird, I have a penchant for melancholy music.
Right.
And yeah, that's the kind of weird stuff I'm into. You don't want to dance to it. You just kind of want to chill to it, or just get kind of slowly depressed to it. But yeah, I do. When I still DJ now, it's live and at parties, and boy, that'll cover anything from, you know, I'll pull on 6 generations or 6 decades of music.
Did you DJ the reunion?
Oh yeah, I did a little bit there.
Nice.
Just a little bit.
That's nice.
Actually, Johnny Morgan was there, who really was the guy who had a big hand in SSX music, both helping curate it as well as making a lot of the tracks in there.
And Steve invited me to that reunion, and
Yeah.
I wanted to go so bad.
You had a valid excuse.
My wife and my daughter were both sick, and they were both, I think, throwing up during that weekend. And I was like, well, I can't leave my wife and kid to go to a party. I had to stay home and help them a little bit. But I was so disappointed, because there hasn't been one since
Never,
you guys made
never.
the game, and that was it. And so, but now it sounds like there might be more.
Well, a lot of people that worked at EA Canada and in the Chaos team moved here from all parts of the world.
Right.
But almost all of them have stayed. Well, Vancouver is an amazing place.
Yes.
But yeah, it was so interesting getting them all back together.
Yeah.
Because, and it was oddly clicky in the old way that it used to be.
Yep.
But yeah.
One of my buds is Clint Hansen, and I saw that he's the technical art lead or something.
Oh, yeah.
Genius guy.
Brilliant.
If you are watching this and you worked on SSX, thank you. From not just me, but from everybody that's watching this stream or this archive. You made lots and lots of game players very happy, and thank you very much. And I do hope that we get more, man. I really do. I've got a good one here from SamIM111, who always comes up with great questions for us. What are your favorite unlockables and or Easter eggs in all of the EA big titles that you worked on? And I think you're expected to remember the code for how you can get to that.
My favorite was in the very first game.
Yeah.
And it was only an unlockable, but it was to me so momentous and so different than the rest of the game. And that was when you completed, I can't remember what the last track you had to beat was in the sequence of tracks, but they were all highly curated tracks, right? You had a course, you had a couple of alternative paths, but when you got to the end, it unlocked what I think we called untracked. And all of a sudden, instead of being at the top of this course with all these grandstands and well-defined course, you were just being dropped by a helicopter in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And that had never happened in a game.
That really was SSX3, wasn't it?
It was a precursor because you had never had, where do I go?
Yeah.
And you really felt like you could go anywhere. And also, an old music producer friend of mine from Los Angeles had made the track to that. And it was so ethereal, and nothing was ethereal in there. It was all Adam Mackay-Smith, who had a lot to do with the music and a lot of the weird, quirky stuff in the first one. Super creative guy who also happens to be Johnny Canuck.
Nice.
He used to describe the music in the game as fun music that kicks ass. Awesome. This ethereal tune, when you unlocked it, it was like you were high.
Yeah.
It was like, you're just like, wow. And so for me, that stands above the rest, because it was even. I knew it was there, and it still felt like a magic moment to me.
I'm imploring anyone that can speak with the brass at Electronic Arts to connect with Steve and let him go nuts with this whole idea, and not, with these brands that we already know. Half the work is done in their awareness out there.
Oh, no, you know what?
They're sitting. You can make new ones for sure.
Oh, no, we you know what? I shouldn't say we. I've spent some time talking to some of the leaders at EA, as well as other companies there, and you know what? There's some amazing people there now.
For sure.
Who are interested in making some great games. So, there's a possibility they end up being who we work with.
Cool.
But, I don't think it matters on what the specific theme is as a starting point, or even what the specific name is. Or do you?
I think it does.
Okay.
And there's two reasons why. I think that you were the originator of not just a game, but an ethos and a vertical within Electronic Arts. And Electronic Arts has been in a lot of trouble in the eyes of a lot of game players out there, and they need titles, especially like this, to help kind of sway public opinion about the kind of game company that they will be going forward into the future. Games as service doesn't need to be something that has any, stigma attached to it. It can turn things around, and I say this all the time, that this is a business that's always reinventing itself and trying to figure out how to find its paths. This is an extraordinary idea and an extraordinary direction to take something like games.
Okay, I am officially making you an honorary member of our business development team. That was an incredible pitch. I'm in. I'm in.
I've been doing this for a little while, and I would love to see SSX come back, and I would love to see NBA Street come back, and I love the FIFA Street franchise, and we're talking about shocks and everything in here. I just want to see you get back to work making us wonderful things.
I am. I'm enjoying my last few weeks of having control over my schedule, because I know it's going to be at least 5 or 6 years.
Remember this tan, everybody.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to fade.
I'll be really pale the next time you see me. Thanks for having me in.
Oh, thank you. Guys, we actually have to end the show there as well because the cafe has got an event that's coming up, so we have to clear out of here. So that's going to do it for our episode of EP Live. We'll be back again on Wednesday with a brand new episode for you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Steve.
And can I just say before we leave,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for being such a big supporter of the games industry, such a big supporter, personally for me, of the games I've worked on. And I know there were a lot of people disappointed that you weren't able to make the reunion, but you've had a huge role in being a promoter, a cheerleader, a passionate lover of games, and I'm so excited to see you doing what you're doing now and having this platform to reach people on, so thank you for that.
You are a sweet man. Thank you. All right, you guys, we'll see you very soon, and until then, play forever.